Deep in the smouldering bowels of Death Mountain lies Ocarina of Time's second adult dungeon, the Fire Temple. The temple is segmented into layers. The bottom levels are flooded with simmering pools of magma, the upper decorated in ornate carved stone. The dungeon is centered around two problems: freeing the imprisoned Gorons and finding their legendary hammer in order to slay the dragon which threatens to eat them, who lurks in its lair in the west wing of the lower level. The Fire Temple is found in the blazing crater of Death Mountain, but Dodongo's Cavern, the first fire-themed dungeon in Ocarina of Time, is tunneled into the rock on the trail leading to the volcano. This cavern functions as the Goron's primary mine, used to gather the most nutritious, delicious rocks which make up the mountain dweller's diet, and is as crude in design as you'd expect a Goron mine to be. Bare rocky walls held up with wooden supports, much like traditional mine shafts, and the gargantuan skeletons of long-dead Dodongos. The Fire Temple, on the other hand, is much more decorated. In place of simple wooden supports and plain stone, it has smooth carved walls and stairs, statues and pillars. In addition to the obvious symbols representing fire, tribal designs are scattered throughout the temple. Tiki statues and a strange grinning face with accentuated lips. What the temple itself was used for is never explicitly stated, but the fact that it's filled with various prison cells, of which Darunia is aware, means that it may have been used as a jail, at least in more modern times. Regardless of the original purpose of the Fire Temple, its design is incredibly interesting. Something that not many people realise is that, like Level 9 in the original Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time's Fire Temple actually takes place within Spectacle Rock, a recurring structure in the series. The rock first appeared on Death Mountain in the original, as well as in Adventure of Link and A Link to the Past, and most recently in the Gerudo Desert in Breath of the Wild. In Ocarina of Time, the structure isn't named, but in the center of Death Mountain crater, we can see a rock formation which is unarguably meant to represent the iconic Spectacle Rock. Two similarly sized peaks connected in the middle so that from above it looks like a pair of glasses. While the Fire Temple's entrance leads away from Spectacle Rock, Link actually has to climb down a ladder and then back towards the structure, with the true entrance to the dungeon found just below the rocks. Knowing this, the design of the Fire Temple, two symmetrical cylindrical halves, makes a lot of sense. Each half is found within one of the two parts of Spectacle Rock, making it the third dungeon in the series to do so, after Level 9 and Turtle Rock from Link's Awakening. And the dungeon's main item, the legendary Megaton Hammer, parallels another item in the series, the hammer found within Spectacle Rock and Adventure of Link. So the Fire Temple is an apparently ancient shrine, built into Spectacle Rock in the very crater of Death Mountain, an area where the air itself burns so hot that Link can't survive for long without the protection of the Fire Tunic. It's here, in the very heart of the volcano, that Link faces the subterranean lava dragon, the serpentine Volvagia, a dragon from ages long past, revived by Ganondorf and used to threaten the Gorons. But what was the intended purpose of this structure, and who built it? And what was Volvagia, who predated Ganondorf's rise to power by years? Simply a malevolent dragon of the deep, or something greater? The Fire Temple is built from a strange burnished gold stone, with angular patterns and iconography on the walls. The most common symbols throughout are those of a flame, fitting for the Fire Temple, and this bizarre grinning face, often flanked on either side by the flame pattern. Despite serving as the main fire dungeon in the game, in the very center of the Goron's home of Death Mountain, the Fire Temple doesn't appear to have been built by the Gorons. Not only does it appear to be unused, hidden behind a secret passage in Darunia's chambers, the architecture is completely different to Goron-built structures, like the simple mines of Dodongo's cavern, made from excavated rock, wood supports and bones, and Goron City, dug into the sheer rock of the mountain and decorated with primitive cave paintings, cloth banners, wood, rope, and of course the Goron emblem. None of this signature primitive architecture is found in the Fire Temple, save for a basic wooden plank bridge suspended over lava by ropes in the Eastern Room, which could have been built by Gorons in recent times, where we see there's been some sort of collapse in the floor. The Fire Temple is infamous for its theme music, which in the original release of the game featured chanting sampled from Muslim prayers. Koji Kondo apparently used this sample without understanding its meaning, just using it for effect, as he did with many royalty-free samples. Unless you understand Arabic or are familiar with the prayer, the original theme seems alien, haunting, eerie, evoking the feeling of entering a place built by some long-lost people, and is in stark contrast to the tribal drums of Goron City or the empty ambience of Dodongo's cavern, highlighting just how different this temple and its original creators were to the Gorons. In addition to the Fire Temple's differences to Goron structures, we can see that, in games prior to Ocarina of Time, the Gorons had not settled on Death Mountain. In both the Minish Cap and Skyward Sword, Gorons are vagabonds, a wandering tribe without a home, meaning it's likely that they settled on Death Mountain in relatively recent times. Yet, despite likely not being its creators, we know that the Gorons have a strong connection to the Fire Temple, in particular the Megaton Hammer and Volvagia. An ancient Goron legend is retold to us by Link the Goron, telling the story of his people's first victory over the Fire Dragon. A long time ago, there was an evil dragon named Volvagia living in this mountain. That dragon was very scary. He ate Gorons. Using a huge hammer, the hero of the Gorons, boom, destroyed it just like that. This is a myth from long ago, but it's true. I know because my dad is a descendant of the hero. In an age so long ago that its events have faded into myth, Volvagia wreaked havoc on Death Mountain, terrorizing the Gorons. But the ferocity and power of the subterranean lava dragon didn't shatter the resolve of one ancient Goron hero, who took up a colossal steel hammer and broke the body of the fireworm. The dragon remained a legend passed down through the Goron generations, until the 7 dark years in which Ganondorf lay claim to Hyrule, while the Hero of Time slept in the Sacred Realm. During this time, Ganondorf was able to break the royal family's rule of the land. But, among others, the stalwart Gorons refused his rule. In response, the Gerudo used his dark powers to revive the ancient dragon, and imprisoned the Gorons within the Fire Temple, threatening to feed them to the beast as a warning to other races that might resist him. So Volvagia is simply an evil dragon, right? Much like Aquamentus, Gleok, or Argarok, a malevolent creature summoned or created by a villain. Not quite. Ocarina of Time has 3 elemental races: the Kokiri, residing in the Lost Woods and holding the Kokiri Emerald, the Zora, residing in Zora's Domain and holding the Zora's Sapphire, and the Gorons, residing on Death Mountain and holding the Goron's Ruby. The first 2 of these races were watched over by a guardian deity which embodies their element: the Great Deku Tree, guardian spirit of the forest, and Lord Jabu Jabu, patron deity of the Zora. Ganondorf is aware of the influence and power of these guardian deities, and it's these 2 that he targets when he attempts to extort the spiritual stones from the races, placing a curse on both the Great Deku Tree and Lord Jabu Jabu, infecting them with the parasites Goma and Baronade respectively. Yet, when Ganondorf attempts to take the Goron Ruby, he instead blocks off the source of their food, Dodongo's Cavern, as the Gorons have no guardian spirit. Looking ahead in the adult timeline to the Wind Waker, where just like Ocarina of Time, 3 sacred jewels must be collected to enter a sacred temple, we again see a guardian deity of the forest in possession of one, the Great Deku Tree, and a water spirit in possession of another, Jaboon. But here we also see a third spirit completing the trio, Valu, a great dragon perched atop Dragon Roost Island, known as the Spirit of the Skies, yet also directly connected to the element of fire. In Ocarina of Time, there's a missing third part of the Guardian Trinity, a missing fire spirit. Enter Volvagia, the subterranean lava dragon, an ancient being slain by the Goron hero long ago, newly revived by Ganondorf to terrorize the mountain folk. It's been long thought by Zelda fans that Volvagia could be, in some way, the third guardian deity, the spirit of Death Mountain. And both Hyrule Historia and Encyclopedia seemingly confirm this, the latter describing the beast as essentially the spirit of Death Mountain. And Hyrule Historia goes as far to suggest that not only are the Wind Waker's Great Deku Tree and Jaboon descended from Ocarina of Time's Deku Tree and Jabu Jabu, something which anyone who's played both games could speculate on, but also that Valu could be directly descended from Volvagia. Could Volvagia truly be the third guardian deity? A being so ancient its origins are unknown, just like Jabu Jabu and the Great Deku Tree, who, for whatever reason, harmed its race rather than protected them. If so, why was it known to be an evil dragon? Why would a Goron hero, long ago, have had to fight his own patron deity for the survival of his race, crushing the spirit with a legendary hammer? An interesting point to make is that Ganondorf somehow knew about Volvagia in order to revive it. From what we learn from Link the Goron, the legend of the Goron hero's triumph over the dragon is so old that its validity is doubted. Yet Ganondorf somehow knew about this spirit, and that resurrecting something straight out of myth would be an effective way to threaten the Gorons. Ganondorf somehow also knew about the Great Deku Tree and Jabu Jabu's roles as guardian deities of the forest and water, knowing that they were prime targets for his curses. Might he also have learned about Volvagia the same way, the guardian spirit of the mountain, who unlike its brethren was long dead? Still, we don't learn why the guardian deity of the mountain is seemingly an evil creature, bent on destruction and devourment. But there are clues, found not in Ocarina of Time, but in the Wind Waker, with Volvagia's apparent descendant, Dragon Roost Island's Valu. Valu is a benevolent, caring deity, the protector of the Rito tribe who have come to dwell on the mountain since their evolution from the water-based Zora. It's possible that this evolution wouldn't have happened at all without Valu, as it's by his grace that the Rito are granted their wings. However, by the time Link arrives, Valu is in torment, being tortured from below by a creation of Ganondorf, Gohma, who lurks in the cave below where Valu's tail hangs. The Rito cannot understand why their once peaceful god has changed so suddenly, acting violent and unpredictable, shaking the mountain itself and throwing boulders down, one of which destroys a bridge. This burning rage means that it's too dangerous to approach him, threatening the Rito's way of life as they know it. While Valu rages, Dragon Roost Island is surrounded by a storm, a circular cloud surrounding the peak, which is incredibly similar to Death Mountain's appearance while Volvagia is active, which erupts with a burning ring of clouds surrounding the peak. After Gohma's defeat, the storm subsides and the clouds dissipate, just as after Volvagia's defeat, Death Mountain ceases to erupt, and the ring of clouds returns to the calm, faint grey. Long before Ocarina of Time, might Volvagia have been suffering a similar fate to Valu? Valu's pained fury was a complete mystery to the Rito, who constantly sought to find the reason behind it. But if Volvagia had burned with a similar, dangerous anger, the notoriously brash, hot-headed Gorons may not have been so diplomatic in their solution, resorting to a good old hammering at the hands of their hero. In the 3DS remake, the Fire Temple features, alongside the laughing faces and fire symbols, designs resembling some form of serpent. Could these be depicting Volvagia? And considering how different it is to Goron buildings, might the Fire Temple have been built by some ancient people, long before the Gorons made the mountain their home, as a shrine for the spirit of the volcano, Volvagia? If the Gorons settled the mountain long after the construction of the Fire Temple and the birth of Volvagia, they may not have understood the volatile nature of the volcano's spirit. Like the element Volvagia embodies, and the mountain in which it lives, the deity is fierce and unpredictable, powerful and destructive, especially if it was in a fit of rage similar to Valu's, caused by some unknown ailment or curse. Perhaps the spirit was even enraged by the Goron's activity on the mountain, mining into its sacred temple and carving homes into the rock. And to the Gorons, who may have settled the area in relatively recent times, a raging guardian spirit may have seemed an enemy, a fiend to be destroyed with the legendary hammer. Volvagia, despite being the most iconic, isn't the only dragon fire spirit in the series. Others appear which could be different incarnations, ancestors or descendants of the boss of the Fire Temple. The most recent is Dinral, a serpentine dragon spirit which soars across the skies of Hyrule in Breath of the Wild, alongside its brethren Farosh and Nadra. These spirits, while dangerous to fly near, mean no harm to the various people of Hyrule, and in fact can only be seen by those with a pure heart such as a child. Similar to the Minish or the Koroks, perhaps a choice by the goddesses to keep the guardian spirits separate from the proceedings of mortals. Another is Eldin, guardian of the Eldin province, tasked with teaching Link the Song of the Hero alongside the dragons Faron and Lanayru. While a benevolent creation of the goddess, Eldin's power and volatile nature is still seen. An explosion of his power causes a gigantic eruption of Eldin volcano which knocks Link unconscious, and prevents him ascending to the skies by throwing up clouds of ash. But one question remains. If Volvagia was an enraged fire spirit, destroyed first by a Goron and then by Link, how could Valu be descended from it? The possibilities are numerous. Valu could be a sort of spiritual descendant of the subterranean lava dragon, rather than directly, similar to how the reincarnation of Link happens. However, it's also not impossible that Volvagia had eggs somewhere within the Fire Temple, just like how the Great Deku Tree reproduced via its sprouts, though we don't see anything like it in the game. However, we do see evidence for what might be an intermediate step between Volvagia and Valu in Dragon Roost Cavern, the labyrinth which lies beneath Valu in the Wind Waker. This cave network now crawls with enemies, and great pillars of lava erupt throughout, but there still exist bridges, stone rooms and passageways in the mountain. And interestingly, this architecture doesn't resemble that of the Rito, which features totem pole designs as well as nest-like rooms, with feathers and carvings of birds. Instead, Dragon Roost Cavern features crude wooden bridges, wall paintings and bones, much like the building of the Gorons in Ocarina of Time, in particular Dodongo's Cavern. In fact, the music of Dragon Roost Cavern and Dodongo's Cavern are almost identical, save for a drum beat in the former. Dragon Roost Cavern's ornate entrance even features 3 large statues depicting strange-shaped creatures, with spiked backs and large lips. Could these be statues of Gorons? They feature noses, which Gorons normally lack, but otherwise resemble the rock folk better than they do any other race in the series. Hyrule Encyclopedia claims that Dragon Roost Island was once Zora's domain. though this doesn't mean that Gorons at one point didn't reside within these mountains, sometime in the centuries between Ocarina of Time and the Wind Waker. And during this time, they may have had a new patron deity, a serpentine dragon, much like Volvagia. Instead of the feared creature of myth and legend it is during Ocarina of Time, Dragon Roost Cavern appears to celebrate and worship the fearsome power of a dragon, with carvings of the creature decorating the entrance, walls, and even 2 huge heads surrounding 2 of the doors. These depictions of dragons notably don't look anything like Valu. The carvings at the entrance in particular, in all but colour, are incredibly reminiscent of Volvagia, a serpentine dragon with 2 claws, horns, and a fiery mane. Even the beams onto which Link can grapple hook, dotted throughout the dungeon, seem to be designed to honour Volvagia, or a similar deity, being shaped exactly the same way as the fire spirit's claws. Dragon Roost Cavern may have been a mine, or a shrine, or a sanctuary, but whatever it was, it's clear that between Ocarina of Time and the Wind Waker, someone worshipped or revered a dragon spirit, which from the evidence could well be the missing link between Volvagia and Valu. A powerful, volatile spirit, much like fire itself, but one that the Gorons learned to respect and understand. Knowing this, Ganondorf's Torment of the Gorons may have been one of the most diabolical schemes the King of Evil has ever performed. Resurrecting the raging deity of the mountain, perhaps incorrectly remembered in Goron legend as a fiend, and pitting the very spirit of Death Mountain against its inhabitants, threatening to feed them to its wrath as a message to the other races of Hyrule. It's fitting, in a way, that Volvagia was known to eat Gorons, just like the Great Deku Tree opens its mouth to allow Link to enter, and Jabu Jabu swallows both Princess Ruto and the Hero of Time. Darunia's Bane may have been the literal embodiment of the Gorons' home, twisted into a fury the mountain folk could not understand. However, as seen in Dragon Roost Cavern, it appears that in later years, Volvagia, or its descendant, was revered not as an evil monster, but as an honoured, volatile fire spirit. Thanks for watching this video. What do you think of the theory? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, leave a like or subscribe if you haven't already for more Zelda content. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.